Okay, I'm here with famous Addonis, and so I got some questions to ask him here. What do you think is the purpose of life?
The purpose of life. The purpose of life. There's no purpose of life, but I think the purpose of life might have more to do with why we like certain things at all, why we have an interest in anything at all. I think the purpose of life has more to do with the interest in whoever created it. Now, it depends also what you're talking about. There's a wide spectrum of life. There's little insects to the lions. I'm thinking you're just talking about humans. If you're just talking about humans, I would say the purpose of life has more to do with whatever God's idea of fun or interest or or the rules that God might have been put under. Maybe it's just like it's God and then like a higher doctrine that we won't ever know about. So if I think of a purpose, it has more to do with pleasure and fun and excitement and things that bring a nice positive outlook. But I wouldn't say that's necessarily a purpose at all. I don't think that's meaning at all. I don't think that's what the purpose of life is. And
You
so I
mentioned
guess
play. Does this
yeah,
attach to any particular culture? Because of course we know if you look east, particularly around India, you get this idea of like deities playing. Um,
yeah, but I think it's more like a categorical thing. Like it's almost like we gave a feeling, which is a word. So then they gave it a deity, because it's important to remember um, the foundations of civilization, or else it might crumble from beneath us. But the most important thing though is that it's obvious that pleasure and fun and all the positive things that people feel with their bodies is the main locomotive source of energy, reason for the direction being took, and now it becomes a matter of there's a thing watching over us, helping us grow and nourishing us, and that um, if that's the case, then there is no meaning at all to life, and that there might even be more of a it might even be. I mean, it's pretty good. Life's pretty good. It's good to everybody. So mostly.
what are your favorite attributes of deity?
That's a good question. I would say probably um do you mean like, all right, before I get, because there's like do you mean godly like moves, or like godly um attributes, or do you mean like deity god stuff that was already done, like god of the sun or god of the moon? Do you mean like superpower stuff, or just like,
Like any of that, like uh,
I was gonna say regenerate
like qualities. If you think that there were particular forms or whatever,
qualities of, okay, I was gonna say
but
regenerate.
of the sun or whatever, like again, India has some pretty long list because in general they don't like, okay, here's this quality. They say deity of this, deity of this, deity of this, and you end up saying some list that's sometimes over 1,000 names that are.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I mean, when you get all of this extra time, and then you figure out that we all are being watched by a deity, and that we can only singularly we can only recognize it singularly because we all see it, in unison, and but then that we know all the different details. So that it's just like it's just for fun. It's just them going a certain direction that feels like will strengthen their foundation and keep interest in the society, which has proven to be true. That they're the Indian people are like massive. So it's a ton of them over there, and they have nuclear arms too. So they've proven to be a formidable force, with all the deity things that they do. So God stuff is important, but it's also really obvious, I think, to everyone about this one thing that it seems like it's just like one thing all the time. Um, but then it's also good to be separate. Separate is good a lot because everyone gets to, you can't make love without having a separate space. And then like you can, but then you have to be a certain kind of person. And then that's not everyone. So just like and that's like the foundation of human growth. And a lot of the Indian deities have to do with sexual stuff too. They have a lot of, I think,
Well, that's
the Indian ones.
that's one of the disappointments is that because they don't have this approach that Christianity and to an extent Judaism has, a lot of the more complete translations aren't complete translations because we can't translate that verse. I'm reading a book right now, and that's one of the things they say in the intros that yeah, sometimes it's going to be Latin, sometimes it's not going to be translated because. But is there? Well, I guess that relates to another question. Is there anything you think would be hard to do in the name of divinity?
Hard, killing people. That's always hard. The what's made it kind of easy is you see Muslim people, they have two different kinds of Muslims, and then they have a certain Muslim people that makes it like they make it seem like killing people is like their main mission in the name of the Lord and God and all this. That's the only religion that does that. And that
Well,
makes it.
it's not supported by the religion. It's sort of a political thing. Like for example, Daesh was founded by a Mossad agent, and these other things. It's like they stir up this stuff on TV. Like the blasphemy laws in the Quran are not like in the Bible. The Bible says you kill for blasphemy. Jesus in the Bible says, whoever doesn't make me Lord, bring them here so I can watch you kill them and stuff like that. And the Old Testament, you kill the polytheist, you kill whatever. But they blasphemy in the Islamic sense. If you look at Surah 4 and Surah 6, it's just something you dismiss. You don't get violent over it, no matter what the blasphemy is. You just don't, you know. But
Yeah.
people hear on
No.
the news. People of all groups, they hear on the news and the TV what they're supposed to do, and they don't
Yeah,
even.
but I'm not mentioning anything of the inner workings. Or I mean, I'm not here to highlight anything of inner workings. Only because if I were, I'd be a much more educated man. I'm talking about something more particular that everyone knows about, and I'm talking about it's called 9/11, and that was done specifically by Muslim people. And then we're talking about thousands and thousands of people dying in one of the most powerful countries ever by this small group of people that were inspired by a religion that was inspired by a religion.
Well, Osama
And
bin Laden was more Machiavellian. It wasn't religion. It was that he said the West is doing it this way and I can do it this way. And there was actually far less than the other way around. If you look at the statistics here, it's like the war on terrorism killed 15 million people in attacks on soft targets. They at least went after what they considered it government. It wasn't about they believed something different or something. They considered it government. They wanted left alone in their own country. I'm not saying that this is action that I personally would have taken part in. I'm just saying that's their that was their motivations.
yeah, all right, okay, but all right.
And
Can we be so
if
sure?
you look at statistically, you know, a group that has a more history of violence, both what you call Hindus and Buddhists to this day, there's more faith-based killings in every other group except maybe a lot of the secular killings. Well, the Christian world has put it, but have you seen what's been going on in the church? The churches since the TV's been there, and you know it was there
Yeah,
beforehand. Is they're
yeah.
treating it like it's a sacred duty, even though the Bible has Jesus say, "Don't fight for your country." They're still treating it like a sacred duty to go off and.
That's interesting what you just mentioned there. But before about how Jesus mentioned not to fight for your country, but before that, I mean, I truly mean from a standpoint of a young male that might be that might just be starting off in the United States, might be an immigrant from someplace, even from Australia, from someplace. You can stand back and you can look at it and you can say, not saying that this is particularly true, but it does affect the perspective that particularly because of their religious faith that those men were able to take that extra step and then also to believe
Well, if they
doing the
felt
right thing.
persecuted because of their faith, I think pretty much anybody. I think that's part of the thing going on right now between Russia and Ukraine is that the Ukrainian government's persecuting the number one religion in Ukraine, which happens to be the majority faith of Russia as well, and
Yeah,
people just don't want that. And they're also looking at, say, there's 75 Slavic tribes. Ukraine represents 6 of them. And if you're not purely one of those, it's like what they do in China. There's 52 tribes. And if you're not purely of those ancestry in China, you lose some of your rights. And of course, I think we're perhaps getting into territory we can't um, say much more about. But um, I think the motivations are generally just, you know, people feel that they're not safe or they're persecuted, and it doesn't really matter their spiritual leanings.
yeah, okay, but I was just trying to mention um that how pleasure is like the main source of everyone's deciding factors for all the things that they do, and that with also that being said that there's a freaking god, and that somehow, and then also it's not like a person too, it's almost like a molecular, it's like a molecular system amongst all the molecules. It's I mean, everything's always about money because everything's always about pleasure. And then
Like I presume you're in the U.S. as well,
I am I'm on the East Coast.
and so one of the things in particular, it's like there's a lot of reforms they can make, but they focus on the money. You look at how in the 1960s that they corporatized the prison system, and they also switched the media towards programming certain agendas in certain populations, and because of this, it affected you know, it's made the behavior and other problems worse, not better. Like they don't care about 10,000 people being killed with handguns. They care about people with hunting rifles. When like you know more people are going to get hurt with get killed with hammers and stuff.
Um, where's that happening?
More people get killed with hammers in the U.S. than rifles. So there's tens of millions of ARs and stuff like that out there, but hammers actually kill more. But the handguns are the real big killer. If you talk about multiple people shot at the same time, it's almost always a handgun. Like a couple hours away from me, there was a gang. No, it wasn't a couple hours away from me. It was. I don't want to say, but anyways, it was between me and Atlanta, and between me and Atlanta, there was a some gang had hidden handguns in their in the Nerf. So people just thought they were, but if you look at, yeah, you look at the statistics of the numbers of people being killed, handguns are the main thing, and people bludgeoning each other is,
Okay, but look, if you zoom out, see the big picture. You're talking about specifically people being bludgeoned with handguns. But you ever think about how people decide to do anything? What their decisions for anything might be, or
well, they do
their
specifically
desire?
via the media desensitize. Like if you've ever hung out at a retirement home or something like that, there's always somebody that makes some sort of comment or something like that. They make the violence on the TV look fun, and it doesn't whatever. And you understand
Okay.
why people, if they just get a little bit off,
No, I was thinking the thing with the I guess if you believe in Christianity, then you're able to answer everything with just a that they're either in heaven or they're in hell, and that a lot of these people that live their lives, they don't have lots of pleasure in their lives, and it's possibly because they're still in heaven, but they're just on their way to their higher plane, or it's possible that they're in hell, and they can be right next to you in hell, and you would never know because they're gonna have cancer, or they're gonna shoot someone and be in jail for the rest of their life, and not enjoy the rest of their life. There's all types of ways um, for people to enjoy their life. There's people that live their life at a very heightened, amazing, heightened pleasure state, fun state, doing anything they want. No, no sense of control necessary, needed at all, except for their bodily
well, it's
functions.
like are you familiar with the tarot?
Yeah.
So it's like that whole devil card thing. It's like everything is there, but what side do you want to pick? And do you want to pick this sort of bondage? I guess it depends on which card you're looking at, but sometimes there's like a man and a woman, and they're always but they can take off those chains, but they're leaving those chains on. So it's not that the material is evil or any of this other stuff is
Yeah.
evil. It's just how the choices that people are making in the area, or maybe they're
Okay.
not waiting.
When you say that, it makes me think of how spiritually we detach from the human body when we die, but nothing can is possible, that nothing actually changed, and that our next life we're still going to find ourselves in similar uh everything would be similar. But I don't know about that. I don't know if that's necessarily true, and I guess I know all the basics for that already, of heaven or hell. I already decided that there's people that are either in heaven and in hell, and there's no way to really figure out if they are or not. The only people that can know if they are the people living their life, and they're living a certain way, particular way, and that they figured out, oh my God, they're in hell or they're in heaven. And then sometimes they're really, in heaven, and they just don't know yet. I mean, I
Well,
really,
I think in another way, it's like you look at how things are here. You kind of get a clue of how things would work if things translate over eternally. It's like it's not exactly, is it good or is it bad, or how do things,
it doesn't seem practical. That's for sure. It seems like everything.
yeah, it doesn't seem practical that it's either burning in a pit and everybody's the same, or in heaven and everybody's the same or something. It's like,
Yeah, yeah. No, because how can
and
somebody?
most of what you see with reincarnation, some exceptions, the Yazidi don't seem to see it that way. Some of the modern groups like the Thelemites don't really see it that way, but usually reincarnation is an idea of hell. So you do stuff you can't deal with, then you have to
Do it again.
Yeah, well, at the least you have to do it again, but you know your form that you take on is related to your issue,
Yeah,
and in a way that could explain what's going how society
yeah, that
just
helps.
keeps on getting worse because people figure, oh, I can do it in the next life, and
Okay, so okay. So you're saying that my reincarnation is possibly related to my issue, which would mean that my body would somehow inform me of my future before I do anything to it. That I can learn from what I'm gonna do and what's gonna come to me and how I'm gonna feel and certain things like that. If I can look at my body as a reincarnation. I never done that before. I'm gonna start doing that.
um, what do you think happened in pre-existence for you?
Pre-existence civilization.
I mean, like before you're in this particular body, anything
Uh,
mystical you think happened
okay,
before
okay,
that?
okay, okay. Um, I was Adam, and then I was able to record that I was Jesus, and now possibly I might be able to record that I'm the second coming, maybe unofficial from the way things are going. But I'm only 30 years old, and I have the rest of my life, and I'm telling the truth, and I'm still alive. So yeah.
An interesting thing I found out years ago about people not telling the truth is well, I guess drugs are more effective with that, but you know, your prefrontal cortex, people who are really liars, that starts to function less and less.
It's unbelievable. The thing about it is, what I'm talking about is unbelievable. What I'm saying is unbelievable. Now, whether I'm lying or not, it's very important that I make it so that you know that I don't care. Um, but it's true. And what's true about it is scientific. And if I could figure out how science can record the molecular soul that is the first soul, then I will be finally Jesus Christ. But until then, I don't think anybody will ever believe me, and I can only record myself so that my reincarnated soul or my next soul can further our journey as a species. And then when I say that, I don't actually think my next life could do that. I really believe I'm the only way that I can do that. And then I say that, and
Well,
I'm gonna say
I
that.
wasn't making an accusation. I was just saying that made me think of what I've seen about brain effects.
No, it's
Now,
fine. It's okay.
if you
No,
authentically believe something
that you
and you
can
think that this is
discredit that
true,
you can discredit me through that you can discredit me through a lot of educated and a lot of statistics that can easily be discredited, and it will always be that way. That's basically what you're that's the main thing, the main point of what you're saying right now, because of science and stuff. But I only cannot be discredited because it's 2023 after Christ.
well, I think a lot of things that people claim are science or it's like right now very particular. They've invented a whole class of scientists that is spokesman, but the people who work in the areas that don't have that title don't make the same statements. It's only the people that are getting paid in the millions to say this stuff and they're labeled as a scientist or they label stuff as science, but it's like they put headers on studies um, that aren't, if you look at what the study says, the study doesn't seem to support the header, but the header, you know, because they're, you know, like they're like every year, especially around like some big drinking holiday like Christmas or something. I know that's not what Christmas is about, but you know what I mean. Um,
Yeah.
they always say how good alcohol is, but when you have the fruit or the grain or whatever, it has the same benefits. Now people say, okay, but grapes, they filter grapes. It's like, well, okay, then the issue is the filtering and not using the seed or whatever. Um, but you know that they put out these studies or they put out studies about a type of a decade ago they said something about a type of cosmetic surgery when they showed in the study that behavior mattered a lot more than the surgery did and the surgery actually made things worse if you didn't behavior if the behavior was the same but they put this header on the study, like getting cosmetic surgery was somehow good for your health.
Yeah, I think that's more of a personal realization. I think that has more to do that
but
you're a
so much of what is
person.
claimed, like a lot of religious things, there's not really actually any science against it.
Why? That's weird.
I mean, there's not the physical evidence, but then again, there's like experiences people have. If somebody told me when I was 18 years old, I believed my whole life that I had a soul or was a soul or whatever, but I never experienced it. But that moment that I experienced it, but scientifically, I don't know if you can say there's a soul or not. There's sometimes like an unexplained weight, just a very slight weight that when the person actually dies, and when a person dies actually is hard to tell because they used to say we don't think he's breathing, we don't think his heart's, and then it was the brain, and then somebody brain dead could be buried in like once a decade or something. Somebody brain dead is actually buried for a couple weeks and digs out.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of things we can't say.
No, it's look, there's a lot of ways that people want to look at it to keep interest. Like if you understand that God is a free flowing system in a molecular structure that we already figured out, if you understand it like that, then you know that it's just trying to have fun. It has a bunch of different names. It's trying to figure out how to go here and there. It's just trying to have a good time. And then sometimes, because we know, because humans do live this, sometimes humans like to hurt. They like to hurt. They like to hurt people. And that's part of God's natural way. Now, there's also these other feelings that we feel, like honor and a sense of morality, maybe a sense of duty. This stuff that we taught ourselves, we like to say that we taught ourselves these things. This is a natural reoccurring thing amongst humanity, that we have a duty to protect the things that are weak because we know that we're strong. Now, like I said, like that's just all goes back to what's fun and what's not fun, and it ends there. It really ends there, and it's just in a circle, and it gets so bad because it's not fair. Because some people are really in hell, like me, maybe. Hopefully not.
Well,
I
some
think I'm
people say it happens here.
I'm supposed to be in heaven, says the Bible. Because Jesus dies, he goes to heaven. That's what it says. Maybe I don't know. Maybe somehow I'm not in heaven anymore. But I wouldn't recommend believing that for anyone, because if I was Jesus, I would say it's more important because we all, as a human species, we know how to manipulate each other. And if we can manipulate just one soul, then you would manipulate it to be at a good mood, just like how you wouldn't want the earth to be so pissed off that it started hurricanes everywhere and then people couldn't live here anymore. It's literally the same thing because we're all molecular structure and we decided to be alive because we like to be alive and that we know what it means to be alive and that we understand that being alive is better than being a rock. Which, by the way, some people don't actually believe that. Some people like the idea of being a rock or a tree more than being human. It shows too. My point is,
Well, at the very least, what in dreams, a person can experience stuff that, one's not experiencing in this body.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
but
I don't know if you've had the experience that there's like, either it comes in or it's just part of it, but it's like something's supposed to be like inanimate matter, and
yeah,
but you experience it like there's some sort of
that they're
living
important.
spirit or something there.
Yeah, no, that matter that isn't alive is just as important as matter that is alive. Now, that's my issue with it because I don't believe that, but it is though. I like my house and I like my things. I like the video games I play. And right now, the phone that I'm using is technically alive, but it's not. It's really not. Uh, so, yeah.
How much time do you think could or should be spent daily in spiritual or religious practice or whatever you would call it?
24/7. There's no, it's not possible to run away from something that is the reason why you're. I mean, you know what? There's a lot of people that do that. I'm not one of those people. I think 24/7 is how I do it. It seems to do good for me. Most of the time when I'm not being religious, you know what? Can you ask me that question one more time?
Um, how, how much time do you think could be spent daily, or I guess it would also extend into weekly or occasionally um, in spiritual or religious practice? Or
How much time? How much time? It's not possible, by the way. Um, all right, how much time? I would say 24/7. I don't think it's actually possible. I can't hide from the eyes. Everything that's not matter or that's not alive is still alive. Like that's why I was having a hard time saying that this phone wasn't alive. It's not alive, but um, the electricity that runs through, and then it is not only limited by electricity. Um, uh, that is what it speaks through. It lives through it. It lives through anything, every detail. It lives through it. But it also is like for some reason it's bound by rules. Like it's not gonna ever do anything out of the ordinary. There's a reason why it doesn't, like a wall doesn't shift into like a something else. There's a reason for why it doesn't do that. And it's very serious. It takes that very seriously, which is obvious, but it's more obvious when you actually say it, and then it starts to be interesting because then it's like, oh, it's a relative to like how I feel about my life. Ironically, when I say that, I almost speak in the first person of God because I'm saying I'm speaking of my life, and then I'm talking about the molecular structure that is important and that it can't speak for itself. I speak for it, and that it does speak through those things, everything, all the matter, all the walls and things you can think of. Yeah.
it's that sort of principle, I think, kind of bounces off of. It's like artificial intelligence and digital intelligence. It's just that humans don't have the conception that the natural lawgiver would give. So therefore, the issues are either because they just don't know something, or they're intentionally kind of putting something in.
That
It's like something we've seen for my whole life. I've seen, and you've probably seen too. They put this stuff on TV, and either it's to like direct us to make it easier for us to do something in the future, or they're just kind of saying, it's like what the computers do on purpose, and that sort of stuff. Like
yeah, no. Yeah, no, again, it's just a system, the heaven and hell thing. You're in front of a thing, you're more or less docile, not doing things. Most of the decisions that people do, they don't actually make those decisions. Most of the desires that they feel, they don't actually have those desires cultured themselves. They don't do people live a life, um, and that has to do with the consequences from their previous life, and it's been this way for years, and it's always going to be this way until everyone understands that there is a one soul that is me, and that the soul lives and dies over and over, and we're trying our best to keep track of it. And see, this is the part where it's just like I cannot blame the world I can only blame individuals. And then we have demons and angels. And
Well,
then we
that's
have
why it matters
one.
that people have this idea like, oh, I can't reach enough people, so I'm not going to try. And it's like, but if more people had the idea, okay, I can encourage or discourage here or there, and it's and leave it at that, then you know what could be accomplished in the world. This programming where most of us, it's like liberal conservative doesn't mean it means like some sort of political grouping or something like this, rather than something that actually applies to the groups actually thinking different. They're both just two groups run by the same people, um,
Yeah,
thinking about it the same way.
sometimes. I mean, liberal conservative. I only heard that one time about a liberal conservative. I don't think it's important for me to be politically savvy. I think it's more important for me to be catered to as a god, like you would think a god was, so that maybe that the future would be like better for everyone. But then I wouldn't even believe that that is possible. I mean, but now it's definitely possible.
Like, for example, I would say that like for example, from a spiritual a religious scholarship point of view, you have four ways of looking at things. Um, you have fundamentalist, you have conservative, you have liberal, and reform. And so reform can actually be like atheist or something too. But fundamentalists will go to the sources and make their own conclusions. The
Okay.
conservative will generally rely on other people's things. It's like any church you go to, you can point in the Bible how something about that church is wrong, and they don't. And I'm not just talking parts that contradict each other, but there's always something, and so it's obvious. But they will tend to put, okay, if my church says it, it doesn't matter what the other our sources say it in a way. Um,
Yeah.
and you got liberal that's
No,
supposed
it's
to be, technically, I know the thing about liberal giver and that sort of thing. I'm talking about in that respect is people for their so-called self-interest are what they think the interests of others. They're going to leave off what are called religious and family values towards that end. And a reform is there were people like you were talking about earlier. Sometimes, usually not, but they tend to think, okay, we don't have to follow the rules, but we have this end game sort of thing. So they're
yeah.
changing things, claiming they have the spirit. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's hard. It's hard
They
to.
don't. They don't right
I
now.
know.
Right now, the spirit is some kid in Connecticut in a in Connecticut. That's the spirit. And then also they can connect with the spirit. And then if they know of me, then maybe they do know the spirit and connect with. But otherwise, it's not real yet. They're fucking. They can be. I mean, okay.
Yeah, it generally
God,
comes off as a rebel without a cause,
yeah,
as the old movies called it.
yeah. But okay, all right.
Oh, well, I'm under a minute. You want to switch over to a new meeting with the
Yeah. All right.